All right, everybody. So to begin this next part, we've got our basic lines down there for our master copy. And what I'm going to do now is something that's helped me out a lot is like I like to look at, your scene, whatever your still from your film or television show, whatever you've decided for this project. The next thing I like to think about is like, where are my darkest areas of value? Like, where are the darkest areas of this work? Instead of going back in and trying to plot out exactly where everything is again, just look at this in a real general way. Look at your work and think, where are the darkest areas of shadows, of where the light's hitting in dark areas. So for me, if I'm looking at this as a whole, and I'll just quickly switch colors so I can show you this, the darkest areas that I notice are like, this character's hair, all of the shadow area sort of back here. We've got some dark areas up there. Here's sort of some nice spots here that are dark as well. This whole area really down here is really, really dark if I think about when I'm just looking at this in general. So other areas here on this booth, those areas are all dark. We've got this really nice shadow here as well. And then this whole upper section gets pretty dark because it's a little further away from us. But those are the dark areas. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to go backwards in time a little bit and show you kind of what I would do. So I'm going to grab, I've got a pencil here with my brushes tool. And all I'm going to do is just quickly hash in where these darker areas are and where the shadow, because when we use other materials later, if you have colored pencil things at home, markers, you can go and adjust the stuff. But this is going to give me a better visual idea of where the shadows and where the light source is in my work. So I'm just going to go through here really quick and sort of plot out and hash out where these darker areas are in pencil. So again, when you're looking at this, everybody, obviously this looks really rough. Because again, what I'm trying to do is I'm not trying to be super critical right now about where everything is placed or the details of this stuff. I'm just trying to figure out roughly where the darker areas are, in my photo that I'm using as reference. So I'm just doing this as like a sort of a visual note to myself here. I'm gonna move this around a little bit. But yeah, up in the sort of the hair, definitely a little bit darker there on the top. We've got in this booth behind, this whole area is pretty dark because of the shadow. This is also getting dark as well. So I'm just playing this out here, laying all of this stuff out, this darker value based off of what I'm seeing, in my image below. This is actually all quite a bit dark back here. And this is just a technique that's helped me out when I'm making any kind of drawing or painting or anything that's two-dimensional, especially if I'm using a photographic reference, is I just kind of go through and I try to find the darker areas of this work. So I just have a pencil and I'm just putting this down, so now all of a sudden this whole space doesn't feel so blank or empty at this point. And we will adjust this stuff as we move forward, everybody too, because I definitely just want to start this process pretty slow because I don't want to get focused on the details too soon. I see a lot of people do that with their work, and sometimes that will create a big hiccup for you as you're trying to finish your drawing. So this whole bottom spot's really dark. So I'm just going across and getting this whole area pretty dark. We can kind of still see our sketch lines underneath, which is good too. But I'm just trying to go through here and add, where I think those darkest areas of value are. Now on this figure's face later, it's kind of a half and half situation. Half of the face is in sort of the shadow and the other half is very much in the light because the light's coming in from our left. So I'm just going to place those things in there where I think they should go. So this is the next part that's going to work out well. So now that we've got those darker values down, the next thing I like to do, and for this, an example here, I'm going to actually start by throwing down some color. So what's nice about this is I can kind of make some quick selections of color based off of my material that I'm using here with my iPad. But if you have color pencils or mixing paint, you want to look at your image and start to maybe mix some swatches up of some things. So I'm just going to start real generally with a sort of light blue just to put down this shirt here, and I'm actually going to create a new layer so I can kind of go over top of this. So based off of those early black lines that I had put in, so you can kind of see these black lines, I'm going to fill in where I believe this shirt will kind of exist here later. So I'm just going to throw this in here as well really quickly. And this kind of gives me an idea of what I'm going to be looking at here later with this light blue here. So I'm just going to throw that in there. The other thing too is, like, generally speaking, this image is pretty warm because of all these sort of pink, kind of salmon colored booth that is in the scene. So I'm also going to find areas now, just like I did with what was dark just a few minutes ago. I'm going to go through and see what is these areas where there's that like that pink of that booth. Where does that show up? So I'm also going to put this stuff down as well. So I'm going to kind of just, it's very, very similar to a scumble kind of process or a scribble, but I'm just placing this stuff in here as a visual kind of cue for myself, because as we add detail later, we'll be able to navigate through this work because we've made all these choices here. So I'm going to throw this stuff down. And right now, I just got to keep in mind, too, I can't be too critical on myself, because this is the first, 5-6 minutes of this drawing is just coming together, this work that I'm trying to make a master copy. And that's the biggest things for all of us when we're doing these kind of things is, like, you want to just go really slow. You want to be looking at your image, whatever section you're looking at, and you want to try to, emulate what's going on there with these colors and these values first. That's just something that helps me out. There's lots of ways to do this, folks, but this is a process that has really helped me out quite a bit in the past. So that's why I wanted to share this stuff with you today, because I understand a lot of times the feeling of trying to get this stuff right on the first try, and that is oftentimes just unfair pressure that we put on ourselves. So I just want you to go real general, real easy. And this, again, is kind of sloppy. It's kind of fun to do this. You're doing, gestural marks and things. You're plotting out what these colors are, and this stuff is going to help us later on in our work. So this is kind of the first step, first few layers here of this drawing, and then we will get the placement of this stuff. We'll get more accurate about it too, but these things really do help later on. So I'm just placing this in here. Roughly speaking, I mean, that's where those sort of pink areas are. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab some of this nice tan, sort of muted brown color, and I'm going to place this as a sort of separation between this booth that our character here, Samuel L. Jackson, is in. I'm going to put this stuff down just quickly. This helps us separate some stuff here. So, and all I'm doing is just color picking from this awesome tool that I have here in Procreate. So I can just put my finger down and eyedrop basically a color choice. So I'm also too gonna go back in now once I've laid those first couple colors down. I'm gonna go back in with some dark value again and decide like where those darker values are over top of some of this color, the shadow. So I'm going to use my pencil here. Let me get this on the side a little bit. And this is, again, I'm looking at my image below while I'm making these marks above here in this other section. So, and for me, this master copy, stylistically, I want this to look sort of a little more like colored pencil or something too. So that's what I'm going to try to stick with as I make marks throughout this drawing, and we can adjust stuff as we go. And there's also these sort of lines here that separate these booths. I'm just going to put this stuff down, and we can adjust all these things later. But this is just things that will really, really help me out here just in a little bit as we start to put some stuff down on this table and things as well. again, I've completely drawn over like where his arm is going to go, but we will get that back here in just a little bit. But this is kind of how I like to start my process. Is I just try to go relatively loose, really more gestural. We also have some, let's see, we have got some rocks and things back here too. I'm going to do my best to kind of fill these spots in. This person's legs back here. This is all kind of dark value. We can go in and add color later if we'd like, but for right now, I'm just going to put that back there. So, okay. All right. So our next move here we're going to make is I'm going to, like I said, I try not to put too much focus or emphasis on the figure. So what I'm going to do is instead is I'm going to try to establish this interior setting a little bit more. So the things in the foreground on this table, I'm going to try to get in there. Some more detail about these booths and these chairs, because that's also helping set up our scale with this figure as well as these objects. So you can see above here, everybody, you can kind of see through here the quick gestural marks that we made underneath this dark area. And I'm going to use it as a guide, but I am mostly going to use our grid. So I'm going to move this above what we just did so we can see this grid again. So what I'm going to do is I just use a lot of dark value. Now I'm just going to use some lighter gray value here to hash out where these plates and things are. And this is always the fun stuff to do, as you're trying to figure out exactly the distance between like the edge of your cup to where that grid shows up. So you're using this and you're, again, using your photo as a guide, and this is this process of like this master copy idea for what we're doing with this project is all of you have screenshots or stills from films, or you're working from images on your phone and things as well. But I do suggest putting some kind of grid over top of your image, because it can serve very much as a guide. So again, the things I'm paying attention for, everybody, when I'm placing these objects is the distance between where this grid line is and where this object shows up. So I'm looking at all that space in between there. So when I go up to this section, I'm going to try to get this plate as accurate as I can. I'm also noticing like how close the edge of this plate is to my grid. So I'm going to go up here, and I have a little mark underneath that I'm using as a guide, but I'm just going to kind of place, roughly speaking, where that dish will be in there. So I'm just, again, we're just plotting out the general stuff here, just the shapes. We'll get to all that detail stuff later, but I'm just working kind of fast and furious here to get these things as placed as roughly as accurate as I can. So there's another cup there. We have this sort of fork on a napkin situation back here. So I'm going to place this in here as well. We've got some other things here. This cup has a saucer or something that's on, or a plate. So I'm going to place that in there as well. We're just doing our best here, everybody, for right now. We're just plotting the stuff in. We're moving pretty quickly. And again, I'm just using like a scumble or scribble kind of technique to place the stuff in, because I'm really just focused on the placement of these things. I can adjust the scale and all the detail stuff about adding the reflections and the texture and all that stuff too. I can add that stuff later. Right now, I'm just worried about the accuracy of like the space between the objects in here. So kind of show you this, what I'm talking about. So this dotted line, right? If I'm using, let's say, the edge of this cup, how far away is it to this corner? Or another thing that you could try is like the edge of this cup, where does it intersect with this grid? And then you can kind of use that knowledge when you're looking at things. You can use that, you can bring this stuff up, and you can hash in and fill the stuff in because you're looking at where those things intersect. So I'm just going to quickly place that right there. Let's see. Other things to look out for, everybody, is like these kind of odd shapes that this stuff makes. So in the what would be the negative space here of this table, right? So this kind of creates an odd shape, but we're going to see how closely we can get this down here. So the edge of that table seems to be about right there, and then we're going to place this other plate in there, and I can kind of see underneath to where this sat. So our figure, their hand is probably going to be in here at some point. So we'll just keep that there loose as a note for ourselves later when we start to add some more detail. But I'm just hashing stuff in, just some little things here that are going to add to this environment.